which is surprisingly fast. Let's take a quick little look here. Yep, we're live already. All right, so we're a little bit late today because I decided it would be better to eat lunch first rather than sign off after half an hour and eat lunch. But first I gotta tell everybody, streaming game dev, gonna do UI work. Paste. And then over here, ditto. All right, so pardon me if I suddenly get hiccups or whatever. I've gotten tired of looking at this, so we're going to go ahead and start to create actual UI elements, or at least less temporary UI elements. And the big things we're going to need to do are create new 9 slices and create some background elements. So that's what we're going to just do today. We may do some other stuff too, depending on how fast everything goes. So in order to create 9 slices, you basically just have to decide what sort of visual you're going to aim for. And I think what we're going to do is we are going to just create a squarish interval with just a cutout on one of the sides or 2 at the sides, just because in general that's a generic sci-fi thing to do, and it doesn't feel crap to do it. It feels pretty good. So that's what we're going to do. So that's just the kind of way that you do it, and then what we'll do is rotate and deselect here and here, unrotate, and then when we paint into that, we're going to go ahead and paint with just a blue, just for starters, and then we can reduce the scale here by say 3 pixels, and then hit delete. And that gives us this really, really sharply delineated set of curves. But the problem is that when I did the 9 slice, I ended up causing some harm here, and it's not actually all at the right height. So we're going to have to move some of this around so that the 9 slice doesn't just completely suck. And we're just going to drag this down like so. No, you know what? We'll try it like this. We can always change it later. So we just hide it here and hit save. We're saving it as border 1. We probably don't want it to be blue, but that's fine. We can recolor it later. We switch it over into a UI sprite and then give it a polygon. Go over into the sprite editor and set up the 9 slice. So the 9 slice is just a matter of moving things around until you've bracketed the part that you want to be sliced. For example, like this. But I don't really like how this is going to look, so we may change it in a little bit. Still, it's good enough for now. Now that we've got that as a 9 slice, we can drop it into any of these elements and see how it looks. We'll just go over here into this pufferfish mission, and we'll drop it in as a new panel. We can just say that that's the 9 slice. Boom. And you can see that what we get out of that is this sort of setup. Deciding exactly what size you want your 9 slice to be is important, because I intended this 9 slice to be part of the vertical elements, like this, rather than part of the short elements. And that means that really it's supposed to be down here on that. So what we're going to do is we're going to just delete this. Now, there is no Control X, so I will copy it. And we'll go down here into the sidebar and put it here instead. Now the sidebar has a vertical layout group, so what we need to do in order to prevent the vertical layout group from seizing our element is to make this a layout element that is exempt. And then we can just do this, and again drop the border in, and give it an opacity. And we can sort of start to think about exactly what we want our widgets to look like. And the answer is that we don't want this shape. The overall shape is too large in terms of it being too much of a cut on this side. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back into here. We're actually going to make this a different size. So the way we're going to do that is we are going to just make the height 128. And then we can move a lot of this down to the new bottom. There we go. So just grab it. Shroop. Now, you can make 9 slices really, really tiny. You can make a 9 slice that's like 10 pixels wide. But I don't really see any reason to do that. I really got the vocal fry going on today, sorry. So we're not going to worry about saving space. It's fine if it's big. Save that. There we go. Boom. And we just pop on over, and there we are. That's a little bit more like what I had in mind. So if we take a look at this kind of 9 slice, I wonder what will happen if we scale it down. So if we take the scale and we move it all down like this, you can see that what we get is a thinner version of the border with smaller cuts pulled out of it. And you might be thinking about whether or not that's any use. I'm not actually sure. So I think that if we try to make this scale down and then match up to the edges, it would work better. But the problem is that the scaling is applied after the anchoring, which makes it a little bit rough to try and pull it to the right size. Super Cephalopod stopped in. Hello. So basically, I can scale it down, which will probably properly scale the 9 slice, but then I'm going to have a really hard time expanding the border back up to where it's supposed to be. Like I could do like negative 200 and then 200. Well, that malfunctioned. Look at that. Hold on. I am still waking up, I guess. So what we need to do is make those all negative numbers. There we are. So you see, I could like try and stretch it, but it stretches in a really weird way. So in the end, I don't think it's going to work out. I think that if we want a thinner border, we're going to have to just make more borders. Still, this is fine for now. What we're going to do is we're going to make a second element, which will just be this filled in, like so. First off, we want to save this. We want to save this as a white element so that we can recolor it as needed. But then we also want to paste inside and save this as fill1. We doing pretty UI today, the Roland asks? Pretty much. I don't know if it's going to be pretty, but hopefully it's not going to be quite as distractingly bland. So we've got this border one. Now we have to have this fill one. The problem I have is that the way that Unity does this doesn't allow me to copy the elements over here, which is just terrible, because what I really need to be able to do, why is that like that? That would explain some of the things I was saying earlier. I need to be able to copy this border or this entire sprite element. Unfortunately for me, it doesn't let me. Well, the good news is it doesn't actually matter as long as I keep the brackets in the right space. So that's what we'll do. So just bring the brackets into the middle here and it should be fine. There you go. Even if it's not precisely the same, as long as the curved elements are all within the same regions, it's fine, because only the slants matter. The perfectly matched horizontals and verticals don't. All right, so once we've done that, what we can do is we can go back into this Crew UI. Was that what we were doing? No, we were doing the sidebar here. Go back into the sidebar and switch it from being background to being fill, like so. And you can see that immediately what happened is we lost these edges, which is what we wanted to have happen. The panel, we can go ahead and just put in a little bit of a deviation here, just to make sure that we don't have any spray from that background element. And we'll change this to a much duller blue. And then what we're going to do is we're going to just add in some buffering to the left and the right so that our elements don't overlap. Now, this is probably not exactly what I want in terms of how it should look. but I want to try and get it set up to feel spacey, and then we can refine the shapes a little bit more. Relin says, you should blur. It will look better inside Unity and make the rescaling less jagged. So the only parts that would take advantage of a blur are these diagonal lines. And if we blur those diagonal lines, or if we don't blur those diagonal lines, what we get is this really, really sharp element. So I could blur them inside of the image editor and then allow Unity to not blur them, but I don't really know whether or not that's going to matter at all. I guess I could try it sometime. Right now I'm just trying to block out the shapes, so I'm not too concerned. For the buttons, the idea of a button shape is a little bit iffy because what we need to do is create the squareness of the button. We can't take out big chunks like we did here because we'll end up with all this empty space. So what I'm going to do with the button is I'm going to create like a really exaggerated fat plus shape. So to do that, we'll just go ahead and edit this back down to 64 by 64 and save this as border 2. In fact, I don't even know, do we want to save it as, I don't think we need to save this one with the border separate. I think this one can just be fill 2. I don't think we need to worry about where the border is here, but we're going to do much the same thing we did before. In the last one, we were very careful to, we weren't very careful to keep it even. And in this one, we probably should try and keep it even, but I'm not sure what the best way to do that is. I think what I'm going to do is just edit one corner of it and then duplicate the corner. So to do that, we're only going to select like this, and then we're going to just take a chunk out here, like this. And then we're going to do some rotating to make this damaged element a little bit less. Yeah, like that. So once we've done that, we can paste it in as before and then delete it as before. It should be fine. We'll go ahead and make it blue again just for testing sake. I guess we'll make it white because we don't have a background image anymore. Then what we'll do is we will shrink it in the same way we did. I think 3 is too fat. We'll go for 2 and then delete. And you can see that we have some excess down the middle here. We're just going to go ahead and leave that because the truth is we didn't even need to delete. I was just, being a little silly. All we really need to do is change that color because that color is just not the right color. There, that's fine. So now what we're going to do is duplicate this and then flip it horizontal and then move it so that it lines up with the edge over here. And you can see that there is just a little bit of overlap, which means we got the sizes a little bit wrong, but that's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then we're going to go ahead and duplicate the whole set and then flip it vertical. And then not register material, flip vertical. And I think we're going to have the same problem where we're a little bit, that one's a little bit worse. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to go ahead and push this 1, 2. Oh, that was 3. Darn it. Try that again. Oh, well, we can just keep our eye on the white line at the bottom there. We want to see 1 pixel of white. There we are. And then here we can drag it up. There we are. I guess we want to see 0 pixels of white. There we go. So now we have one block that we can mark as opacity locked. And Kingfant says that they really love rotating. Sorry, I missed that. I think I missed that. So then we can select and we can bring down by 2 pixels, and then we can paste in a darker color like that. And then what we'll do is we'll hit save, and we'll have a new fillable element. And you might think that that doesn't look anything like a button. I think I might have made these scoops too deep, but we'll see in a moment here because it's very easy for us to set it up. So we'll just go down into Sprite, Polygon, Sprite Editor. I think what I'll have to do is reduce the scale. I think that this is 64 pixels is too large. We'll see it in a moment here. But if I reduce it down to 32, it should be fine. Maybe even, yeah, 32 should be fine. And what I mean by that is the size of these unscaled divots that I'm taking out. They might just be too big to put on a button, which we'll see in a second here. grab this navigation button and change the background image to this. And you can see that what we've got is it actually clamps down really heavily on the button. So we're going to go ahead and do a few things to change this. The first thing is we're going to go ahead and scale the image resolution down to 32. You can see we get some blurring on the edges here, so it might be worth trying again. Yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and I'm just thinking about what visual I want, and I think that we were chasing something a little bit wrong. Kingfin says it looks like a propeller, or looked like until I deleted it. So what we're going to do here is just select, oh, we got it locked still, that's fine. Select around a quarter of the image, and I think one more pixel would be better there. And once again, we're going to go ahead and delete a chunk out of it. But this time what we're going to do is we're going to start with the rotation like this. And then for the vertical part, we're going to keep it sharp and straight. So like this. And as before, we'll just duplicate and flip. And then merge and duplicate and flip. And now I have to decide, do I want it to be symmetric? Because right now it's symmetric, right? And in my head, I was picturing it as symmetric, but I'm not actually sure if symmetric is a good idea. Well, we can adjust that later. So what we're going to want to do is, last time we went with the dark insides and the bright outsides. We're going to go ahead and invert that. We want to have bright insides. I think 1 pixel is fine. That's all we're going to need. So we'll paste in here and then do this, save it, go back over, and you can see that it turned into garbage, and the reason for that is simply because the polygons are all messed up. So we're just going to redo all of our polygons. Wow, they were really messed up. Look at this. Wow, that was garbaged. That's fine. Long as I can rescue it, it's all good. And the nature of the 9 slice means that even though this looks really narrow, that's actually going to be the fattest part. See? Now, I'm not sure whether this is good. I've been thinking about what I want it to be like. I could make it curved. I could make it scooped. I could make it swishy. What I'm thinking is maybe I'll put like a bubble and then a button and then a bubble. What do you think about that? Let's try that. So we're going to leave fill 2 as it is, and we're going to go ahead and aim for a slightly different shape and size. 30 is a strange choice. I must have mistyped that. It should have been 32 by 32. But for this, we're going to go with 64 by 32, maybe even 128 by 32. And we're going to save this as, what do we want to call it? Grand button, tech button 1. And so what we're going to want to do for tech button 1 is create a series of circles. So we're going to use the circle select and just select a circle element like so. And then we will just fill it in with a gray color. And you can see that what we've got here is a really feathered edge. I could defeather that if I wanted. I don't care enough to, so we're not going to bother. And then what we're going to want to do is duplicate this and move it over like so. And then we're going to want to merge that down, duplicate them both, and move the whole set over to the other side like so. And then lastly, we're just going to merge these 2 bubbles into one element like so. I guess we should also make the insides less darkly colored, which is something I can do pretty easily here. Just grab all of these, scale down by 1, and paint with a white brush. hide the background, the paper, and hit save. And let's just see how that looks. So if we go down here into the tech buttons, we need to again switch it over into sprite, polygon, sprite editor, apply, and then drag these buttons into the right place, which is here. There we go. That's interesting. What's going on here? Well, that's good enough. Those were mathematical operations, so I'm a little bit annoyed that they have a bias towards the top or the bottom. That's annoying, but whatever. Drop it in, and you can see that what we get is this sort of thing. That's pretty much the sort of thing I had imagined, but you know what? I think circles are too circly. Let's go ahead and make them into just plain old divots, you know, littler circular elements rather than the big circular elements. So to do that, we're going to just select a chunk with a rectangular select, and then we're just going to cut the edges until it feels a little bit divoty. Trying to think about the best way to do this. You know what? I think that the best way to do this might be to use a shape drawer. Here. We've got ellipses, but we've also got polygons. And if I just change the number of polygon edges to 8, wow, it's too fat. Brush size 01. Why is it so pale? Shouldn't it be... Oh, you know what? The brush size of 1 isn't actually a brush size of 1. Let's just fix that up there. There we are. So if we set this shape up, what we can do is we can make it any shape we want. So we can just bring it down like this. The problem is, of course, that as you can see, the math is biased. That's so annoying, but what we'll do is we'll just copy the left half over onto the right half, or vice versa. I think we want it to be a 6 edge rather than a 8 edge. Yeah, that's actually what I want. And then we'll just bring it down like... Yeah, there we are. Oh, and click. Oh, and look, it went and ruined it after I settled it in anyway. This is not really built for pixel perfect operations. It's pretty half-assed. Yeah, that one worked. All right, so then what we'll do is we'll just delete this half. Kaboom. And then duplicate that half. And flip it. Move it here. Yeah, that might work. It might be a little bit wrong. The Relin says that's why I use this Paint.net. This is better at almost everything than Paint.net, but not that one thing. Every piece of software has its specialties, and this just happens to be really, really terrible at this one specific thing. It's nothing I can do about it. Also, I think this is probably still a little too chunky, so what we're going to do is just adjust this. Oh, hold on. Just adjust this so that it's a little bit less chunky, which we'll do just by moving the side elements to the proper positions, like so. And now we'll duplicate this and then move it over like this. And then we're going to go ahead and keep it this width, even though it's far too wide now. And then we'll just drag all this across like so. And as before, we're going to want to connect up the interiors here, which we'll do just with a simple select. Oop, that wasn't the right button. There we are. And we just fill them in. All right, and then of course we'll just paste in some. Oop. There we go. We shouldn't even need to edit it. It should just pop right in. It's a little bit goofy. Might still be too chunky. Maybe I should make it a little less chunky, even now, though. Well, let's go ahead and reduce it down one more chunkiness. Do I want to? Should I just leave it like this? Let's leave it like this. I'll be able to tell more about how I feel about it if I look at it for a little while. It's easy to just be like, I want to try something new, I want to try something else, and then just like get completely distracted and not actually get anything done. So the idea here is that I'll probably end up editing this again after I decide what I actually want this stuff to look like. One of the other things we could do, we could make these full width and then hide the element using a mask. So if we were to do that, what we would end up with is, it looks like this, right? Except that if this is a mask, then we wouldn't actually see the parts that are being cut off. If the parts that were being cut off were the correct size, then we would end up with something that fit fairly well. So if we wanted to do that, we would have to go back into that first element and edit it to have the same width as these pieces. We can also just move it using a left offset just a little bit to try and make it feel a little bit less. There we are. Can we go up to 2 here? 2 is not quite right. You know what? That actually might be the start of something I can get along with. It's still very grumpy. It's not. It's pretty gross. But if I come up with a certain amount of buffer space and I decide that that's the right amount of space, maybe 10 pixels, then I can play with fill and hide so that they end up feeling pretty good. Only problem with this is that the panel here is actually part of the mask. This is an issue just because it means that I won't have a 1 pixel bleed, which is what I was aiming for. I don't think you can unmask it very easily, but what we could do is add in another canvas element like this, and that should override the mask. Yeah, so if we do that, then you can see that we pop on top, but the elements that were hidden are no longer hidden, and we are not as opaque as we should be. I'm not sure why we should be completely opaque. It feels like we're not actually being painted with a it feels like the type of brush, the type of overlay was changed from whatever it was to like a hard light or something, which is weird. Oh, it was just that we were sorting wrong. Everything was fine. We were just sorting incorrectly, which meant that we were... There we go. That's sort of what I was thinking. All right. That's a little bit expensive, but I'm not too worried about the expense of this particular UI element. So I think you can see what I'm going to try and do now. I just need to get these edges to all line up properly. If I decide that this is the right size edge, then I can look over here and see that this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's a total of 8 pixels. This is 8 pixels wide right here. And then this is another 8 pixels, so that would be 16. And then 17, 18, and 19. So you can see that what we've got is 19 pixels of space. 19 is an awful number. Just basically the worst number you could possibly get. So we're going to go ahead and move everything 1 pixel over so that it's 18, because 19 is not viable. It's dumb. All right, so now that we've got this to be exactly 18 pixels, we can... I thought I was the only one counting pixels with a mouse cursor when making art, as if someone else... So there are actually magic ways of doing it. I haven't turned any of them on, but I can turn on the grid, and then I can set the grid up to actually have a decent setting instead of 100. This is the real problem with the biggest problems I've got with Clip Studio are the fact that it doesn't save stuff like this. When I save it with a specific gap size, you should give me that gap size as a permanent change until I change it again. Not keep resetting it to 100 like some goof. So you can see that what we get is something where 18 works fine. That's exactly 18. But of course, our images are not quite the right size for 18 to end up lining up, because that would be 16. 16 would line up perfectly. So maybe I should do 16. Yeah, let's go for 16 just to keep things tidy here. Otherwise, it would be an issue. So what we're going to do is delete these, because that would be a pain in the butt. And then we're going to shrink this down by 2 more pixels, which we're going to do just by moving the elements in 1 more space, the edge elements 1 more space, like so. So then we'll change the grid size over into 16 rather than 18. There we go. And you can see that that's 16 including a 1 pixel gap, and that's important. So now what we're going to do is duplicate this and then move this in like so. And then we're going to want to merge that down and duplicate it again. No, that wasn't duplicate. There we are. And move this across. Like so. And you can see that now it's got the exact same 16 pixel line, because we are a multiple of 2 and also a multiple of 16. And then the last thing we have to do is just create that inner button again, which we'll just do it the same way we did last time. All right, so now that we've chosen 16, which is a nice solid number, we should be able to handle creating our wibbly wobbly background element again, but with this time with a 16 pixel element built into it. So in order to do that, we'll just reopen our border and fill one here. Here we are. And as you can see, the grid got reverted. Is the grid still on a 16 pixel setting? Nope. That's so stupid. All right. So what we want to do is our boundaries need to float right across this 16 pixel division here. And it's 32 pixels high. So that's what we've got to work with here. And basically, this is the chunk we're going to be missing. So rather than the way I did it before, we're going to go ahead and paint the missing chunks first, and then we'll just invert everything. So the challenge here is that we don't want to have a sharp edge like this. What we want is an edge that glazes across. Now, in order to tell us how we're going to want to do that, we're just going to grab this 16 pixel element here, like so, copy it, bring it across here, and then these are going to be overlays. We're going to go ahead and cement them and then paint them black. Why isn't it being painted black? Oh, I don't know what's going on there. So if we have this, then the question becomes how much of a gap is there between buttons? Is it going to be just button, 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 button? Because that would be pretty aggressive, right? What's our padding between buttons? Well, I think that 4 pixels is good. So that's what we're going to go with here. 4 pixels between the buttons. And because of that, what we want to have happen is this blue element has to streak down right between these 2 elements. So in order to do that, we're just going to tilt everything 90 degrees, or 45 degrees rather, and then we're going to just paint it in. Oh, on the correct layer. And so just grab this and move it down and then fill it like that. And I think that's 1 pixel too much. So let's just take 1 pixel off. Boom. There we are. That's what I want to see. So that is the chain that we're looking to build. So all we have to do now is, first off, hide these. And what we're going to do is we're just going to invert the colors on this, which we can do in a lot of different ways. But in this case, all I'm going to do is use a fill brush and fill in everything that's not blue, like so. And then we can just do a grab and delete the blue part. You can see that that ends up with a little bit of blur, though, which is not what I want, which is a shame. So we're going to just control, even that ends up with blur. The problem is that my, yeah, so this brush here is anti-aliased. There we are. That's better. No more of that. Perfect. And then we're just going to duplicate this and flip it after deleting this element down here. We don't need it. Oh, it won't let me do both flips in one go. There we are. Perfect. And then we can just fill in here. There we go. Oh no, what happened? Oh, that's fine. We don't care too much about that. When I did my fill, I filled on the layer. That's fine. All right, so now we've got this, and all we have to do is change the colors to white, and then we'll save this as fill 1, and then we'll go back and we'll save it as border 1, but obviously what we're going to have to do before we walk away is to delete 1 pixel of border, or 2 pixels maybe? What do you think? I think 1 pixel is probably best. Boom. All right, go back over into here, and what we're going to need to do is set this up with the proper set of limitations. And I did make it 16 pixels, but you know what? I forgot to add in any sort of buffer, a margin. So what we've got is 16 pixels if everything is exactly lined up. Well, we'll go ahead and give it a shot, but I think we're going to have to actually add in some padding. So what we've got here is 00004, and that should be perfect, but you can see it's not quite perfect. So let's just hide this border here. It's perfect on this side-ish. I think it's 1 pixel off, and then over here it's not quite right. And I think that's because we got 4 pixels on the bottom. I'm not sure why we've got 4 pixels on the bottom. I think it's because they get added in. Yeah, that was a little strange. That's weird. I'm not sure why there were just randomly extra buttons on the extra elements on the bottom. So this is the sort of thing I was thinking of, but I forgot that we're going to need padding around the edges. I think that, what do you think, 4 pixels again? That might be a bit thick. Go ahead and try it at 4 pixels. So we're going to just grab this and move it over 4 pixels, which is one of these thin lines that you can't see. There we are. 1, 2, 3, 4. Move. Go. Jeez. Save that as border 1. And then fill it. And save that as fill 1. Alright, so now that we've got that 4 pixel border, we should be able to set this sidebar up properly with 4s everywhere. And that's more or less correct. That's much more correct than it was before. If we add in the border again, then we'll get it feeling like I want it to feel, except it might be 1 pixel off, so that's not a big deal. Just make it 5. And the last thing I want to do is just chip off those edges. So we'll do that right now. Just rotate 45. And then yoink. I'm using the guides so that I know that I'm not taking off too much or too little. I'm always taking off the same amount. Oh, that's too much. That's perfect. That's too much. That's perfect. And then we can just save that again. And then one more time, select, shrink, delete, save, border. That's a little bit less. Well, what happened over? Oh, I have to redo the exact balance here. Not a big deal. Just massage it a couple of pixels, or we're all set again. Let's make sure that the fill doesn't need to be similarly changed. It does, so just move it across. Exciting. All right, so now what we've got is something that feels. So our next step is going to be to put in a little whoosh. I want to give these an animator, which goes whoosh. Not to pull them out, but to animate in the background. We're going to also want to pull them out, which we'll do. I guess we'll have to do both, really. But I'm trying to think about the best way to do the pull out. We're using this with a mask, so we really can just expand the object. The problem is we don't know how tall the object is going to be. It auto adjusts. Right now it's not a big deal because I don't have a variable number of buttons. I could hard code it. But if you hard code something into an animation, then you're going to end up regretting it. So if we think about this, what we can do is take advantage of the mask by shrinking it on the y-axis like this. But if you do that, all of the buttons shrink too, which isn't really what we want. What we want is for it to just kind of down, right? So what we can do is we can put the mask in on the border. Just drop it down here in the border. Oh, we can't. Okay, never mind. What we can do is we can create a duplicate of the sidebar. Wait, why is the border doing that? Because, I thought that I could specify, but I can't. Okay, so never mind. I was thinking that the mask could have a target specified, but it doesn't appear like it can. I could make it fold out. That would probably be better. If I can't make it swoosh down, I'll make it fold out. Folding out is pretty easy. It just basically starts over here and goes, and there's some kind of bounce effect. It'll be cute. But we're going to need to put an animator on it in order to do any of that stuff. So let's go ahead and set that up. Do I really want to call this sidebar? Because we're going to start to save it into files at this point. We call this the command sidebar. I guess sidebar is fine. There's only one sidebar in this part of the game. We'll call it the mission sidebar. There we go. And then we'll create a clip. And we'll go down here into Assets. And we don't have an Animations directory. We're going to need one. And we'll call this Fold Out, or Sidebar Mission Sidebar Fold Out. Only problem is that it created sidebar.animation or whatever it was called in a random place. Oh, it's there. Good. So now we've got it in this spot, and we can just go ahead and edit it. And it's not that hard. We just select it and then hit record. And then we're going to want to have one element at the end, which we'll do just by hitting a 5 here. No, you don't. Oh, 5. And then at the beginning, we're going to have it start off the edge on the left. I don't know whether or not everybody else had this problem, but my Twitch dashboard just barfed. I'm going to reload the Twitch page, make sure I'm still online. We're still online. For some reason, the bitrate dropped down to near 0 for a little while there. Hopefully that only affected me. Can't do much about it. I could turn off low latency, but you know, it's critical that you guys can chat to me the one time you chat to me, and I get it immediately so I can ignore it for like 30 seconds. That's the core of how this all works, right? So we just move that off to the side. Then what happens is it sweeps on, like what we're going to have to put in is some additional elements. What we're going to want to do is scale this down. Unfortunately, the scaling option isn't actually here. For reasons unknown to me, the rotate, move, rotate, blah, blah, blah widget, when it's on a 2D object, the scaling doesn't show up. Everything else does, which means that if we wanted to scale it, we have to actually pull up the scaling object like so. And obviously that we don't have to pull it that far outside of the screen if we're doing it like this. So now what happens is, over here we have to put the scaling back, obviously. There we are. It goes, and this is just a basic little swoopy thing. And what we're going to do to make it a little bit interesting is we're going to have the curves go in opposite directions. So the anchor position, which is this red one, you can see that what happens is it's got a very nice sine wave. Which of these is there? There it is. It's got this very nice sine wave, right? Also we have to turn this animation so that it's not looping, but we'll do that in a second. And what we want it to do is not have a sine wave exactly. We're going to go ahead and make it so that this is a substantially less... I'll just put another element like this. Like, there we go. And the other part we've got is this scale, which is much harder to see because it's going from like 0.25 to 1. Just grab it. That's not the scale. What's the scale? It thinks that's the scale. Where's the scale? Because I know that the scale.x is at the red. Is this the scale.x here? This red one? Yeah. Okay. So what we're going to do is we are just going to make this bounce in the opposite direction like this. There we go. And now when it animates, what we'll get is a kind of a sproing-y sort of thing. Just a little bit of a sproing. And that should be enough to make it a little bit more lively than it might otherwise be. And we'll just unloop that. And then when we hit play, it should pop right out. The Relin says that it was my fault, and he was lagging as well. Yeah, it happens. So now we've got an animator that can whoop, pull it out. It's this little kind of sloshy, sloggy splorp. So let's make it a little bit less sloshy. And the way we're going to do that is we're just going to change the timescale. Because a 1 second rollout is just way too sluggish. Another option is we could have it flip up or flip down. It doesn't really matter. We can change it later if we need to. Anyway, we're also going to have to edit the editor. edit the animator so that it's got the pieces we need. That means duplicating this mission bar side fold out and making it have a speed of -1, and this is going to be a fold away. That's a whack. There we go. And then we're just going to put in a parameter, which is going to be a bool, and it's going to be called folded out. And we are going to set it up as by default true. Make the transition any state, any state. This is going to be if folded out is true and you're not allowed to exit to yourself. And this is going to be if folded out is false and you're not allowed to transition to yourself. That way it would work fine, and all we have to do is switch up whether it's folded out or not. So we're going to go ahead and hit play here. And you can see that right now it's folded out. Now it's not. Now, in the long run, you're going to want to use 2 separate animations for this because you want to have it feel better. But that's fine for now. We're just kind of experimenting, seeing what sort of feel we want to get out of this. One of the things I could do is I could have it roll down from the pufferfish mission element. I could have it like be hidden up there, and you know what, that sounds like it might be a better idea. So let's go ahead and redo this animation so that it does that instead. And the way we're going to do that is we are just going to delete all of these first points, and then we are going to re-record them. And just as before, what we're going to want to do is have this be offset like so on the y-axis this time. And now before, what I did is I used scaling, and this time I think what I'm going to try and use is rotation instead, because I think that that's going to feel a little bit better. And it looks like it's not working. So for some reason the final key got damaged, I guess. That's interesting. Not sure what's going on, but we can always fix it manually. There we go. That's really, really basic, but what we can do is we can go up to the pufferfish mission and this thing, and what we can do is put that in front, and we can do that by making the mission control have a priority render canvas like that, and now it should fold out through, yeah, like that. Only problem, of course, being that you can see it behind the pufferfish for a second as it comes down. See that? And we don't want that to have that happen. So what we're going to do is we're going to just change this pufferfish menu to be the right size and have a black border so that it can hide that fold out. There are a couple of other ways we could do it if we really wanted to. In fact, let's go ahead and do it the other way. But we definitely need to change the size just a little bit here. It's just the tiniest bit too thin. So we're going to make it 205. Maybe it was just an illusion that it was too thin. I think that it feels too thin, doesn't it? Doesn't it feel like 2 pixels? Well, let's change the backdrop. Well, I don't have a good backdrop for it yet. Oh well. We'll just leave it like this for now. And what we'll do is the mission sidebar, the animation, rather than coming down from up there, we're going to come down from directly behind the pufferfish mission. Like that. You can see that we got offset on the Z-plane a little bit. That's just due to annoying drift in the calculations. We shouldn't have any problem fixing that. There we go. Now if we hit play, it shouldn't come out. Recheck the Z in those panels. That's why it feels odd. Yep, you are right. So now what we've got is the system where it folds down from the pufferfish without popping in from behind it. Now we could make that as complicated as we want, but I don't want it to be complicated. I want it to be just quick and little easy, little punk. And I think that's fine as it is. Let's see whether we can do something with these, because these are really obnoxious right now. They're just really terrible looking. So I think what I want to do is the opposite. Because normally what I do is I chip out edges like this, you can see. But if I do that, we're going to chip out the parts that need to be the most obvious. So what I think we're going to do is bring it in kind of a... I guess we're gonna do the chipping, but it's going to be most of it is chipped. Yeah, that'll do it. So let's go ahead and set that up. I think all we really need to do is create a duplicate of border 1 and call it border 2. And then we'll fill it and call that fill 2, which will overwrite our current fill 2, which was terrible anyway, so who needs it? So if we go down here into textures, or no, sprites, we got border 1, border 2. Border 2 needs to be edited together. There is probably a tool to duplicate and just have all of your sprites edited like this, but we don't actually have a lot of duplicate sizes of sprites. This is something where we're doing something that is a little bit tedious, but it happens so rarely that I doubt there's a tool to make it happen faster. It just doesn't seem like something that anyone would bother automating. I mean, who's going to create 15 9 slices that all have the same basic setup? There we go. Still, I think that if you do the 9 slice polygon, you should default to being at the center. So there's like a 2 pixel by 2 pixel block in the center and everything else is offset, because that, like 90% of the time, that's what people want. So now that we've got a fill 1 and a fill 2, I realized that I edited them wrong. What I want is this needs to be dragged down and that needs to be dragged up. So we're going to go back over into our image editor here and do exactly that. So we'll grab here. And how much space do we want at the bottom? I think maybe 8 pixels? No, wait, it's got to be more than that because that's going to be unedited. So we'll give that 16 pixels. Yeah, okay. So if I drag this down so that there are 16 pixels. Okay, so I have to be a little more aggressive. Yep. Okay, so we're going to just delete a bunch of crap in the middle here. There we are. Drag this down so there's 16 pixels from the bottom of the image to where that starts. There we are. And then this is in the wrong spot. That shouldn't have been dragged down. Who thought about dragging that down? That person was dumb. And we'll fill here. And then we're going to want the other side to be the same. And to do that, we'll just delete the other side and then duplicate and flip. I guess we'll use a rotate rather than a flip, just because otherwise it's 2 steps and it's easier to just there we go. Nope. There we go. So that's going to be our new fill 2. And we'll select and delete. And shrink by 1. Oh, look at that. That's wrong. I got fooled by the background image. This is not actually where it needs to be. So we'll move that up. Move this down. And then fill here. And fill here. And then, of course, as I was saying, Select and shrink and delete and save that as border 2. There we go. Now that that's set up, they should be the exact opposite, which means they should be taking a chunk out of the middle rather than out of the sides. If we wanted to, we could take this pufferfish and try it here just to see whether or not it seems like it would work. Boom. I rotated the whole thing, didn't I? Ugh, what an idiot. That's okay. It's not a big deal. We can just go ahead and rotate this entire thing 90 degrees. The whole image needs to be rotated. I don't know who didn't think of that, but it wasn't me. Somebody else made that mistake for sure. And then again, there's going to be our border 2. We're probably going to have to redo the image. Drag, drag, drag. Draggity drag. Drag, drag. And point. Point. And more dragging. Drag. Doesn't matter where they are as long as there's no curves inside of the element. There we are. So you can see that's the sort of shape we're sort of going for. 16 pixels might have been too much. Well, let's go ahead and expand it until it's the right size and see whether or not that's the case. So we see we've got a height of 40. Let's go ahead and change that to 56. Yeah, well, this is not going to work for this particular object, but it might work for the ones I actually built it for. Let's go ahead and try that out. Over here in UI, we've got ourselves a challenge UI. Here it is. We're just going to switch out the challenge UI image for our background 2. And let's just see whether or not that even works in the slightest. Interesting. So it's definitely way too aggressive. Even if I were to expand it, it wouldn't be expanded enough. So what I'll have to do is this needs to be, rather than 16, it needs to be 32 or maybe even more. And then rather than 16, it needs to be like 8. Well, that's annoying, but it's not impossible. We'll just go ahead and start to do major surgery to us, and then we'll bring it back later when we want to. So that is now 8, and then this whole thing needs to actually be moved over to here. And then we'll just trim this edge. And then delete the bottom half. Kaboom! And then duplicate. And then rotate. Man, I even had lunch. I spent the morning, or I delayed the stream to get lunch, and I'm still starving. I think that streaming on weekends just makes me hungry. No, that's not border, that's fill 2. We're not going to bother with border 2 yet. We're just going to put in fill 2 for now. Oh, we're in play mode, that's why. Okay, so it looks like we've got to redo the cutting. That's fine. Just go over here, sprite editor, cut. Okay, so it looks like, I wonder whether it's going to accept that. Let's find out. It does. I didn't think it would. So really what we need to do is reduce that by 1 pixel. So if we take a look here, what we've got is a little bit of an extra divot, which we'll delete. And then we'll move this entire thing back just 1 pixel. There we go. We could do the whole duplicate rotate thing again, but I think it's just going to be easier to move it 1 pixel and then delete 1 pixel and then save it. So the other option is, this is obviously still need a little bit of work. I'm just trying to get the feel, whether or not it feels like it could work. The other option is that I could create carrots, where they're kind of shaped like hats and sit on top of each other. This is a very similar sort of a feel, though. So let's go ahead and start to drag some of these into our module, just so that we can see how they look and edit them more properly here. So this is how they look right now. Obviously, it's not quite right. Let's go ahead and do a little bit of editing. One of the things that's a little bit strange is that there is a background, which is part of the challenge UI container itself. So there we go. And then what we'll do, well, let's go ahead and turn that back on and see whether or not that actually fits with this texture. Now you can see the problem here is that the edges don't quite work, but maybe if we put in a little bit more padding. No, it's always going to feel awkward because they're not properly offset, so they don't surround each other properly. I'd have to make this one wider. Which I suppose I could do by scaling it up on the x-axis and then shrinking it, but that would be a real pain in the ass. So instead we're just going to not show it. Boom! And there's not going to be any spacing. And what we're going to do here is these challenge UI elements. This image is too small, so we're going to go ahead and make it not the image. We're going to have a panel in here. This is going to be the image. And what we're going to do is we're going to make it big. Like -20, or that's too much. -5, and then 5, -5. And then the challenge UI image we can just hide. Yeah, that'll work. Obviously, this background needs to be up at the top. Like so. And what we'll do is we'll just offset the icon a tiny smidge, and then we'll offset the, what I offset it to 2, and then we'll offset this rules down a little bit. Seems like it's going to be annoying. There we are, 0.2. And then the inner elements we are going to just move. No, is that not it? Yeah, that's it. Like that. Then we can hit apply. Yeah, that's not too bad. Let's go ahead and add in a border, which we will do by using border 2, which isn't ready. So let's go ahead and make it ready. We'll make it ready by just gutting the fill. and saving this as border 2. That needs to be re-edited. Yoink. There we go. Not bad. Now, if we want them to kind of butt up against each other, we can give it like a -5. And you can see how they really, really nudge close. I'm not sure whether I like that or not. I'm also not sure whether I like this kind of medium gray. Let's go ahead and make it more opaque, because the problem is that it's just kind of blending in with the background a little bit. And then we'll make it a lighter gray like that. Now we can delete these two elements and hit play and see how it looks. All right, so you can see that now it's got a little bit of a spacey feel to it. And you can see that it is, this is the thing you need to really pay attention to. The text box needs to be moved. So let's bring that back and move that text box. It's just a little bit too close to the edge. So yeah, that's better. And now we can just go ahead and try it on for size. So here's our power conduits. We're not going to make it unless, of course, we turn on our chemical tanks. Boom. Now we've got two elements where we need engines and security. We can't use the engines because we're using them for something else, but we can just unuse that and bring it here. See? So this might be wide, might be a little too wide. I think that we can bring down that width a little bit, but it's important to realize that this is a tiny window in comparison to what the player is actually going to be viewing in. So even though it's quite wide, it's probably not wide enough to cause any harm. We'll go ahead and bring the width down a little bit anyway, except for I'm not sure whether or not that's going to work if I just do it. Oh, that's definitely not going to work. No, you can see how not everything is set up correctly. So what we need to do is set these elements up so that they are correctly braced to allow for resizing. No, that wasn't it. That was weird. This one right here, the one I clicked on. There we go. And now if I were to resize it down to 250, let's make it 280. There we go. Hit apply. Now the Challenge UI container uses its children's width, and so it should work fine. Let's try it. Okay, so you can see that we now have it just a little bit small. The funny thing is this is not actually the visual I want anyway, but what we'll do is we'll just manually bring that width back out to 290 or maybe even 300, and everything should work fine. But I don't think that that's the way I want that middle text to look in the first place. Because the middle text is okay, there's just no way that that's dumb. There's something stupid happening here. So if we drop the Challenge UI back in and we take a look at that rule desk here, so you can see that it ends really, really early on, and that's the problem. It has nothing to do with the end it there. That's a little better. So the systems and this desk, I don't think that the systems and the desk need to be displayed like this. I think that there are some other options that would make more sense, but I haven't really figured out what I want to do yet. So okay, so I can definitely feel the sort of thing I want out of this, but I think it's going to take more effort to get there. I've done some stuff with trying to hide. You can see how I've got this kind of hiding thing. But the more I think about it, the less that makes sense, not as a visual, but just as an architecture for it. It would make more sense if the command button didn't have a floaty thing on the right in the first place. Just because that way I could cut without feeling like I had to cut it quite that close. I could cut it a little bit more gently, and you wouldn't see the overlap. Similarly, there's also not any real reason that they have to be inside of the bounds of that box. I could have like floating divots off to the side instead of being contained within it. I'm not quite sure whether or not that's what I want, but what I do know is that I feel a lot better about the UI than I did an hour ago. There are still a lot of UI elements left to fuddle with, but I don't want to go too far down the UI path without letting it bake in my brain, because I'm not very good at the sort of visualization that you need in order to get UI right at a first try. So we're going to leave it like this. If you have any thoughts on what you'd like to see in terms of UI, let me know. What I didn't add is the swooshing. Now, that swooshing is something you can add in fairly easily. You can add it in, usually I add it in as an animation. It does require a lot of animation controllers to do that, but who cares? I could add that in now and see whether or not that works. I'm just sort of thinking about the animation, and I guess we'll try adding it in now. So as long as it's saved here and I don't save it again until the end, we should be able to work it out. So here's a navigation button, which is called a screen button, and does not have any animations attached to it. What we're going to do is we're going to add in a couple of elements. First, we're going to add in a mask. And second, we're going to add in a new UI panel, like so. This UI panel is not going to be stretched like that. It's going to be offset to the left, like this. And then we're only going to give it a width of 3. We could probably give it a width of more than that if we create a custom visual for it, which we might as well do. So we're going to go ahead and add in this thing called chop1. There we go. And basically, chop1 is just going to be a couple of beams that can move across the screen. So there's going to be one fat one over here. And then we're going to do a couple of thin ones. There we go. And then all we have to really do is just softly burn out a little bit of the aggression here. Yeah, so that's our chop. So what we can do now is this, we can name it chop, and we can bring the chop in. And then we can just bring it nice and wide here. And we're going to color it a blue like this. And then what will happen is we'll go whoop. It'll be pretty basic, right? Yeah, that'll work. And all we have to do is build an animation of that happening. And we'll put in some colorful antics, right? So if we go over here to animations, we're still on this mission sidebar fold out because the screen button doesn't have an animator. So let's go ahead and add one. There we go. The problem is we don't have a dedicated controller either. Normally you can automatically generate these just by telling it that you want an animation. So we're going to click and then we're going to hit create. And that's going to create the animations that we want. We're going to call this screen button chop. There we go. And basically the screen button chop is just going to go whoosh with the chop. So we'll hit record and then we'll just go on over here and move it across. And this is actually not the right spot because it'll get hit on this part here. So now it goes shwoof. So I think what we'll do is we'll just adjust this until it feels a little bit right, a little bit better. Part of that is going to be rotating like this. And then of course we're going to have to scale it like this. And now if we do this animation, it goes across like swing. That's fine, but it's really slow. Let's bring this down to maybe 0.15. And then we'll create another identical element over here at like 5 seconds. Boom. And then that should just go and be a loop. Let's go ahead and see how that looks. I saved it. Oh well. A little too fast. Let's go ahead and extend this. That's better. That's just a proof of concept. We're going to actually have a couple of chop animations and they're going to play at random. We're trying to go for kind of a holographic, swoopy feel. That part's pretty trivial, so I'm not too concerned. I'm a little bit concerned about the price of having every button have a mask and an animator on it. But I don't think it'll be an issue. Not unless they've actually gotten worse with their masks and animators. It should be okay. Let's go ahead and just see how that looks when we duplicate it a bunch. Because right now they're all in sync. Yeah, that's not too bad, but we're going to want to make it random and not in sync. Going to do that some other day. For now, I think we're all happy. We're all fine here. How are you? Let's go ahead and call it a day. I'll see you folks around in Wednesday or next Saturday, whenever you please. And thanks for keeping me company.